Hello and welcome to Next Point Wins. I am your host, Matthew Geely, and I'd like to start by saying a special hello to my radio audience listening to the podcast for the first time. I will be back on radio next week, so for those who normally listen live, you can tune back into WCCR Purdue on the Tuned In app next week to hear Next Point Wins. It feels like Christmas Eve, doesn't it? NCAA March Madness right around the corner as we get ready to start the madness, start the craziness. I know personally I'm ready. It's one of my favorite 2 days, actually the full Thursday through Sunday, one of my favorite times of the year. Today I'm doing the show from my hometown in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Purdue's on spring break, so I got to travel home and spend some time with family and friends. I'm actually currently doing this podcast from my parents' basement, which is pretty nice. It's good to be home. But that being said, in 2 years, if I'm still doing this show in my parents' basement, that could mean some problems. So it's funny now, but in 2 years, it's sad. So let's hope that this podcast and my future endeavors lead me out of my parents' basement by the time I graduate college. But I will say I do understand now how Joe Lunardi feels about being in his basement. I mean, if he can do it, we can all too, right? Let's go to the scoreboard.
Scoreboard, 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 scoreboard.
In the NCAA, it was two of the first four matchups, so the tournament is officially underway. In the first matchup, it was Mount St. Mary's 67, University of New Orleans 66. So Mount St. Mary's moves on. They will take on Villanova. And then the other matchup, it was Kansas State 95, Wake 88. So Kansas State will take over the 11 seed in that matchup, and they will take on Cincinnati on Thursday. In the NBA, it was the Detroit Pistons 96, Cleveland 128. Oklahoma City 122, Brooklyn Nets 104 as Russell Westbrook continues his dominance in the NBA. He had the visiting crowd from Brooklyn chanting MVP. I'll have my take on Russell Westbrook in the MVP race later in the show. Also in the NBA, it was the Knicks at home 87, Pacers 81. Kristaps Porzingis in that game, said to have suffered an injury, will be evaluated and looked at later. Also, it was Portland 77, New Orleans Pelicans 100, so the Pelicans get the win. And last but not least, to close out the night, you might have been asleep when this one came to a close, but it was Golden State 106, Philadelphia 104. A tight game all the way out, Golden State at home in a game they desperately needed to win after having kind of a rough month. Stephen Curry turned 29 yesterday. He scored 29 points. That was a little fun nugget from there. Move on to the NHL. Couple good games. Washington 4, Minnesota 2, which gives the Blackhawks the lead in that division now due to the fact that they beat the Montreal Canadiens on the road 4-2 last night. Also in the NHL, it was the Islanders 3, Hurricanes 2. That was a final in overtime. Winnipeg and the New Jersey Devils was postponed due to that nasty snowstorm happening out in the East Coast. Also, Tampa Bay 2, Ottawa 1. The Lightning get the win in overtime. And to wrap up the scores from the NHL, it was the Edmonton Oilers 7, Dallas Stars 1. So 7-1, Connor McDavid gets a point. He ties Patrick Kane for the lead in the points race in the NHL. Back to the NCAA, it was NIT action last night as the first round got underway. In the first matchup, it was Illinois, number 2 ranked Illinois, 82 over Valparaiso, 57. Ole Miss beat Monmouth, 91-83. Oakland upset Clemson, 74-69. Colorado State, 81. Charleston, 74. Richmond, 71. Richmond. Alabama, 64. Boise State, 73. Utah, 68. Cal State, Bakersville, 73, upset number 1 Cal. Interstate rivals, you could say little brother gets revenge on big brother. So Bakersfield, 73, University of California, 66. When I went to bed, that score was insane. It was like 44-12. Bakersfield, I didn't watch any of the game, but just checking the box score at half before I went to bed, I couldn't believe how many, like they were 8 of 13 from three. Two guys were just going off for them. So congrats there. And then last but not least, in the NIT, it's 6th ranked Georgia Tech at home, 75, IU 63. That rounds out your scoreboard. If you'd like to contact the show, you can at nextptwins@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you guys today on our poll question as well, which is which number 1 seed is most likely to make it to the championship game? That's Villanova, Kansas, North Carolina, or Gonzaga. Feel free to go to my Twitter page, Matt_GIGLI, to vote. Take part in the show. Go vote. I'll have the results periodically throughout the show. Over this past week, what did I watch? I had the opportunity to go see some Indiana playoff high school basketball. And I'm very biased being born and raised here in Indiana, but you ask people from around the country who have seen basketball in Indiana, especially high school hoops, it doesn't compare. You can't give me a state that has the kind of atmosphere and just liveliness that high school sports, especially basketball in Indiana, does. So I got the opportunity to go see a regional championship game featuring my alma mater, the Fort Wayne Bishop Luers Knights, taking on Tipton, and it was a great game. It's the first time I've seen my alumni play in the tournament or just in general throughout the season. So I didn't really have any like super hard fanatic rooting. So I just kind of sat back and watched everything unfold. And it's amazing how much you forget what high school basketball is like compared to college basketball. Couple rules or I guess calls by officials that stood out to me. One, the carries. When you get away from high school basketball and you see like the next level of the NCAA, you don't see many carry calls. I don't know if it's because the refs just don't look for it, if the players are just better to the point where they know not to carry it, or it just doesn't even like happen. I don't know, but in high school, carrying is a big call, and it happens a lot, like almost a crazy amount, and then you'll get to the next level and you'll never see it. Second one, which this one is I'm starting to see in the NCAA as well, but really it's starting to set in. I mean, it's huge in high school, and that's the block or the charge calls. Referees love to make a block call or a charge call. Like, it seems like their like favorite thing to do. I don't know if it's true or not, but every time there's a collision going to the hoop, there's going to be a call, and it's going to go one way or the other. There's a couple in this high school game where I kind of saw, I think it was 2 plays where the player like pulled up for a jumper, and he kind of leaned into the defender just a little bit, and the defender obviously fell down, and the charge call was made right away, and it was like one for each team. I was just kind of standing there thinking like, man, I don't understand that at all. It just looked like a basketball play, and it's a play that in the NCAA probably wouldn't have been called, but I think we're starting to see a new wave of officiating where the block or the charge is called way more often, and probably more often than it should. Sometimes 2 guys falling down doesn't exactly mean you have to blow your whistle. Like, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see in the next coming years what the NCAA does about it. I don't think the high school would do anything to change it, which is fine. It's high school basketball, but I think that there's going to be a time where they're going to need to bring up the fact that there are too many block or charge calls being called. And then last but not least, it was shocking how obsessed high school fans are with coaches and being in the box, like being off the floor. I mean, you see, guys famous in college, like in the Big Ten, your Tom Izzos, your Tom Creans. I mean, they are just famous for just pacing and being out on the floor. And not even yelling at the refs, but just being out on the floor trying to coach. Like, it's like they want to be out there too. Sometimes it is annoying sometimes, but like in high school, these fans, they go crazy when a coach leaves the box. Just screaming, yelling, pointing, and like the referees hate it too. It's weird. It's like for no reason whatsoever should they step onto the court or out of the box, which I don't even know what the box is, but I guess it's just like a rule we have all kind of come to accept, that there's like some kind of parameters that a coach should not step out of. Also, I watched, moving away from high school sports, I caught the second half of the Big Ten championship game. it's kind of hard for me to stomach it after watching Purdue lose to Michigan in the opening round, opening game for Purdue on Friday. But I did watch the second half of that game. It was a pretty good game up until the end where Wisconsin it was kind of crazy. Like, it was like a 45-second stretch where Wisconsin, couldn't hold on to the ball, and Michigan couldn't miss a shot. So it kind of got blown open late. But, I see a team like Michigan, and I'll have my take on some of the teams in the bracket coming up here, especially Big Ten-related teams. But watching Michigan, it just seems like they have stretches where no one should be able to beat them. The way they shoot sometimes, they're about as streaky of a shooting team you're gonna find. And 1 through 5, it's a John Beilein offense. 1 through 5 can shoot the three, and they can shoot anywhere, and they create shots for themselves, which is huge when it comes to the tournament. But you'll be hard pressed to find a team that plays a style like Michigan, but plays it better. There is one team in the tournament that can do that, and I'll have that for you guys here coming up shortly. And it's kind of funny where that team is located on the bracket. So Michigan plays tough, gets the Big Ten championship. What a crazy week for that team. A lot of times we get stuck up in the basketball part of it, which is very important, of course. But just personally, as a fear, I can't imagine what those players were going through. I'm sure by Saturday they had pretty much moved on, I would have to imagine. Thursday was probably hard, and Friday was probably pretty tough. But after beating Purdue, I'd have to imagine that they were like, okay, this is in our rearview mirror, and we're gonna take this opportunity and charge ahead. But for those 3 days, I can't even begin to try to imagine what that was like. And just to hear some of the stories of guys who stepped up to help mentally and physically get people off the plane and get people into a state where they could, cope with what happened. It's one of those things where it was scary. You hear different reports on how bad the actual crash was, but it's one of those things where I think what if that plane would have got off the ground, I'm sure it was going at crazy speed, and you look at the plane, you've seen pictures of it, the damage, they had to have been rattled, all of them. And I heard some players were complaining of, feeling dizzy or having headaches. And we know Walton kind of cut his leg trying to step off the plane with some shrapnel coming off the plane in the crash. So props to Michigan. Probably one of the best conference tournament stories, and best by the way of best being not it was a great opportunity, of course, but more just the way that they rose up from where they were. And probably one of the greatest stories you'll ever hear or ever get to witness from a team. And it just makes it even more better for them to run the table. And to be honest, aside from the Purdue game, they dominantly handled everybody they faced. So they're going to take that momentum into the big dance. Also, I watched the selection show. I watched actually both the men's and women's selection shows. The women's selection show was on Monday night on ESPN, and then the men's was Sunday. I didn't watch the men's selection show last year. I think I was out of town. I think it was my spring break as well, and I was out of town or something. But from what I heard, I didn't miss much. I remember checking my phone trying to figure out what seed Purdue had gotten, and I couldn't scroll fast enough. Just there were so many people so angry at the way they were doing the selections. It was like an hour and a half show, and each half an hour they would announce a different part of the bracket, I guess, which is crazy. And then the bracket got leaked, and so that was the whole scandal of, is this bracket true or not? And then as we started seeing it unfold, everybody was like, oh, this bracket is legit. Okay, I don't have to watch this an hour and a half show anymore. So I thought CBS did a better job this year trying to get it right, trying to make sure that, it didn't get leaked, which was most importantly, but secondly, they backed it off. And instead of it being 2 hours, it was only an hour and a half this time. You had your commercial breaks in between each region, which that's fine. It happens. I just liked it in the old days where it was boom, 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 get them all out and then just talk about it. But all in all, it was better. It was easy to watch. I saw Wisconsin get that 8 seed early on, because they did Villanova's bracket first because Villanova was the number 1 overall. And when I saw Wisconsin get that 8, I immediately thought to myself, oh, man, here we go. Like, it took 30 seconds into the show, and immediately I was like, there is no way a Big Ten team like Wisconsin should be an 8 seed. But they are, so they will possibly, if both them and Villanova can get by their first round matchup, they will meet against each other in the second round. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, okay, Big Ten, here we go. Here comes a Purdue 5 or a Purdue 6. Here comes a Michigan 8 or 9. Here comes a Minnesota 7 or 8. I was prepared for the worst, and it turned out not to be too bad. There's a couple misseedings here and there, but we'll talk about that shortly. And then for the women's show, it got me thinking because, you watch it, and I was happy to see Purdue getting the 9 seed, taking on Green Bay in the first round matchup with a date with Notre Dame if they can get by Green Bay in the first matchup. And I was watching that show, and, how hard is it for these broadcasters and coaches, really? Like, it's UConn's tournament. I know that you play the game because the opportunity to upset a big team. But when it's a team such as dominant as UConn, I wonder if that's good or bad for women's college basketball. Because over the years, it's a sport where you don't have the benefit of the big TV networks always covering your games and a lot of press. You don't get a lot of press. Like, I've seen the press conferences of a women's basketball game compared to a men's, and it's crazy. Like, some nights you'll sit there, the coaches will sit there answering questions, and there'll be 2 people asking questions. Other nights, you get 6 or 7 or 8, and then you see a men's basketball game in the press conference and the press covering them, and each night you're averaging between 10 to 15 at least covering your game no matter who you're playing. So you don't have the benefit of that. And you would have to imagine that you need to pride your brand, like the brand of women's college basketball. You would have to hope that it would all come down to great competition with a lot of teams able to beat each other. And I don't see that. I'm not oblivious. Like, UConn's the best team ever. And it's not even like it's close. Like, they beat good teams, like 2 seeds, 1 seeds, like in the regular season by like 11. So they're not even like super close games. So it's not even like that they're the best and they're sneaking by some people. No, every game they're blowing people out. And I have to imagine that's hard for a brand of basketball to sell. It's hard to sell that kind of basketball where we have one team who's really good and then a bunch of other teams who are equally good amongst themselves, but then when you step up with the big boy, UConn, or big girl for this matter, when you step up with them, you don't have a chance. Obviously you have a chance, but your chances are slim. So after watching that selection show, I saw UConn's bracket, and I always fill out a women's college basketball bracket just to see how it goes, and I have UConn versus Notre Dame. I hope Purdue gives Notre Dame a good game. If they play like they did against Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament, they have a great shot of taking down Notre Dame. I hope they do it. It's just a bracket. I'm still rooting for Purdue, of course, but when it comes to like being smart about picking these type of things, like if you fill out a women's college basketball bracket and you don't have UConn winning it all, I think you're crazy, but that's why they play the games, I guess. Back to March Madness, though. I was looking at the bracket this morning. I purposely, after the selection show happens on Sunday, I purposely take like 24 hours and I don't even like think about it because, you go to ESPN or any sports network and constantly all they're talking about is the bracket and telling you who you should pick, who looks good, who has an easy route. Immediately looking at the bracket, I thought the East region was by far had the most opportunity for somebody to make a run. And when I say make a run, I meant a top seed making a run. So like Villanova or Duke, 1 or 2. I think that region has the best chance of the 1 and 2 meeting in the Elite Eight. I don't see many. I'm not sold on Florida or Virginia, the 4-5s. 3 being Baylor, not sold. So like Baylor, Virginia, Florida, 3, 4, 5. Not sold on any 3 of those. So I think Duke and Villanova by far have the best chance of making that happen. As far as the most opportunity for an underdog to make a run, it's got to be the West. I have a couple upsets in the West I'm going to call out right now. First, as I mentioned in a past show, I was thrilled to see Florida Gulf Coast matching up with Florida State. 3 versus 14. Give me Florida Gulf Coast. Calling it right now. Mark my words. FGCU, first round against Florida State. Take them. Also in that section of the bracket, VCU over St. Mary's. That's a 10-7 upset. As far as who I like to come out of that bracket, I think Notre Dame has a great opportunity to make it to another Elite Eight. I don't see much with Princeton. And then you have Gonzaga having to beat either Northwestern or Vanderbilt in the second round, which could be tough. And then I like Notre Dame against Gonzaga if Gonzaga can get that far. As far as the bottom of that bracket, Arizona. I've always been a fan of Arizona. You know, you don't get to see them much being a Midwesterner because they always play that West Coast late game, the 10:30 start. So you usually only catch the first half, if that. Sometimes you even forget that it's on. That's kind of one of the downsides of West Coast basketball. But fundamentally and just all around solid, I actually have a national championship in most of my brackets. They are my pick to do it. Any other upsets? Oh, back up in the East, I had Marquette over South Carolina, 10-7. That's the only really upset I had there. Moving over to the Midwest, I think Michigan State will beat Miami. That's a 9-8. And then Kansas-Michigan State should be really interesting. I don't know if it should be, but we just, as fans, we kind of have this perspective of Tom Izzo and Michigan State in the tournament, aside from last year, that, you know, they just figure it out. Like, magically, like, Tom Izzo snaps his fingers, and boom, they figure it out. So I'm curious to see how they do against Kansas. I think Kansas is a very good team. I don't know if they're a great team, but they're very good. And Michigan State has an opportunity to show its March Madness powers once again. I like Nevada over Iowa State. I heard a lot of people also calling that shot. Rhode Island over Creighton. Rhode Island's a good team. I watched them play in their conference championship. I was very impressed with how great they shoot the ball really well. Let's see. I got Winthrop over Butler. That's a 13-4. Another team I saw in their conference championship, which I enjoyed their style of play, and I thought they were fundamentally solid. And Wichita State over Dayton, but this is the first real seed problem I saw, and everybody is pretty much calling it out. There's no way Wichita State should be a 10. Now, I heard people saying as high as 6 or 7. I don't agree with that, but I think Wichita State is definitely an 8-9 type of team playing in that 8-9 matchup. So it's unfortunate for Dayton, and in honesty, it's unfortunate for Kentucky, but another opportunity for a Wichita State-Kentucky rematch. Maybe that's why they became a 10. I don't really believe in the whole conference, in the bracket matchups and how they say they don't put certain teams with the ability to play certain teams. I think it happens. I don't think it happens as often as we believe that it does, but it's definitely something that sometimes it's a glaring matchup where it's like, for instance, Kentucky, Northern Kentucky. Okay, you can't tell me that's not for real. And even FGCU, Florida State. Like, I don't believe that those teams just randomly fell in the same spot. I know it has to do with region, and like that helps wherever that site is being played, making it possible for like a good following, and I get to put people in the seats. So, and then last but not least, and this brings me back to my Michigan point I made earlier, I said there was one team in this tournament who I believe plays the same style as Michigan, but better, and that is their first round matchup against Oklahoma State. A lot of people I talk to think that Michigan will go far in the tournament, and when you look at my bracket, it's very Big Ten bias, as I really do root for all the Big Ten teams to do well. But I saw that Michigan-Oklahoma State matchup, and I immediately thought Oklahoma State's the better team. And I picked Oklahoma State to upset Michigan in the first round. Curious to see what happens. Michigan plays a really good style of basketball, and they're one of the hottest teams in this tournament. But when you see how they match up against Oklahoma State is like identical to them, which could give Michigan some fits. So I took Oklahoma State to beat them and move on. And then my last super, I guess, thing I'm passionate about with this bracket is I believe Big Ten will have more Sweet 16 teams than the Big 12 will. Just, that's more me. My heart feels that. I feel that in my heart because I just hate this reputation the Big Ten has this year, and I think that Minnesota has a great chance to move on far. I think Purdue has a great chance to move on far. I think Michigan State could do damage to Kansas. Wisconsin possibly could do some damage to Villanova. Maryland looks good. If they can get by Xavier, then they're going to get the Florida State FGCU winner, which looks good for Maryland. I said that Michigan would lose, and I'm going to stick by that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for these, and we have the same amount as the Big 12 in the tournament. So mark my words, Big Ten, I'm going to say Big Ten gets 4 in the Sweet 16, Big 12 gets 3. So Big Ten goes 4 out of 6, Big 12 goes 3 out of 6. We're going to take a quick break here. What is wrong with sports? I'm going to give you my take on my biggest pet peeve when it comes to sports and sports talk. Also, then the segment that's sweeping the nation, unsportsmanlike conduct. I have three pretty good ones for you guys. Remember, vote on the poll question. Which number 1 seed has the best chance to make it to the championship game? That is up on my Twitter page, Matt_Geely. Also, email me questions. Email me your brackets. If you got your brackets filled out, love to hear from you and to see who you think is going to be your Final Four. I'll give you my Final Four here coming up shortly. Looking at the poll question right now, Villanova has a small lead, 40%, and then Kansas, Gonzaga, and UNC are all tied at 20%. So Villanova, the early favorite to reach the championship game amongst the Next Point Wins listeners. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Next Point Wins. I'd like to start out by saying thanks to everybody for their kind words of support. Since I've been home, I've heard from many people, some I didn't even know were listeners of the show, giving me words of advice, which I always appreciate, good and bad. Anytime you guys have advice for me, email the show, nextptwins@gmail.com, or message me on Twitter, or if you have my number, shoot me a text. Love to hear from everybody. Love the support I received. A lot of people saying they enjoyed the show. So please tell your friends, tell family members, tell neighbors about it. Love to gain a bigger following. Yeah, it's a couple people telling me that, I say things and they find themselves agreeing or disagreeing, and that's exactly what I want. This show is a way for you guys to get your weekly sports flavor, I guess, and then take that and transfer it into looking into something that I said that interested you, or having random conversations with coworkers, family, or friends about kind of the stuff I cover. I don't always go super in depth on topics. Sometimes it's just better, I think, to present the topic and let you, as the listener, take it in whichever way direction best suits your interest. That being said, it's the segment that is sweeping the nation, Unsportsmanlike Conduct.
And now, an unsportsmanlike conduct.
Personal foul, number 15, unsportsmanlike conduct.
That's a horrible call!
First one comes to us from the NCAA First Four tournament game. It was the Mount St. Mary's University of New Orleans game. In the second half, something seemed to happen directly after a timeout where 2 players from the University of New Orleans were coming off the floor, and you see them have a small altercation. It was between Trayvon Thibodeau and Christavius Gill. And they kind of lost control and shoving back and forth. And then Trayvon actually went and tried to choke his teammate. Kristavius Gill. And this was late in the game, late in the second half. And a game that was super close. It was decided by 1 point in favor of Mount St. Mary's. But after that little altercation, Trayvon was benched for the rest of the game for attempting to choke his teammate. And a game that he was playing really well in. So not exactly what you want to see from your players as you're in the big dance trying to make it into the next round against Villanova. Not a good look for the University of New Orleans. So I'm going to give a technical foul for unsportsmanlike conduct to both Trayvon and Kristavius for their unfortunate actions. Number 2, and this happened on Friday last week. Sometimes I find news right after my show ends on Wednesday, but if it's really good, I like to hold on to it for the upcoming week. And Friday, as you all know, are starting to realize for me is Dan Patrick show. Big fan of them. And they had a great interview with Bob Knight going. And, I'm a believer that Dan Patrick is maybe the best interviewer in the field of sports broadcasting, or really in broadcasting in general. He seems to get things out of people that others can't, and sometimes he doesn't even do it on purpose. And that's exactly what happened when they had former IU and Texas Tech coach Bob Knight on. And after going into multiple different conversations about retirement and fishing and sports and basketball, Dan, towards the very end of the interview, finally got into kind of the tougher questions, which Dan Patrick's never shy of asking the tough question. And he asked Bob Knight if he would ever consider going back to IU. And Dan made a good point that it's not that maybe he wants to, but just the fact that, it's like it's the fans. It's not the fact that he wants to, it's the fact that the fans feel like they want to give him the proper send-off that he deserves for all those years. And Bob Knight immediately talked about how much he loves the fans, and on his deathbed he'll think about those IU fans and how great they were. That being said, when Dan asked if he would ever go back, Bob Knight said there's no chance, and Dan started going into the fact that, most of the people who worked there when Bob Knight was there are no longer there, and the president had passed away. And then Bob Knight kind of cut him off and said, I hope they're all dead. So not the greatest thing to say about anybody or any situation. And I think it took Dan and the Danettes back a little bit. And listening to an interview after the show with the Danettes, which are like the 4 people who have conversations with Dan on air, the producers of the show, the 4 Danettes pretty much said that will probably be the last time Bob Knight will ever do an interview, especially with the Dan Patrick show. And it wasn't even Dan's fault. I mean, Bob Knight said it on his own will. It wasn't something that Dan was trying to reach out of him. It was just, I think it was raw emotion that he let out. And, we as fans always say we want real takes, we want real people speaking their mind, not covering it up or sugarcoating things. Well, Bob Knight didn't sugarcoat that. And he gave his honest opinion about the situation and how he felt. And, I think we all kind of knew that's how he felt, but just hearing him actually say it, I think was kind of tough for some people to hear. And it's sad and it's a shame, but also, who are we to make somebody go back to a place where he doesn't want to be? And, he's been to the city, he's been to Bloomington, he's been to Indiana multiple times doing different types of charity and speaking on behalf of people. But I don't think he will ever go back to Assembly Hall, and I'm not sure he should have to. I understand as an IU fan why you would want him there so you can say goodbye and thank him for everything. But if he doesn't need that closure, then that's not really up to the casual fan to demand. So we're going to give 15 yards. I'm not quite sure to who, whether it's Bob Knight or the fans. So we're going to do offsetting 15-yard penalties because that was just a wild situation that just was sad to see happen. Last but not least, it was Narcy. That's a person. He was sent off for headbutting Vardy in a Champions League match. So Narcy was sent off for headbutting Vardy in a Champions League match, killing 2 birds with 1 stone there last piece of unsportsmanlike conduct and your soccer scoop for the week. And that's it for unsportsmanlike conduct. So, we've all been hearing a lot of noise, I guess, from the NBA about this MVP race. And there was talk last week between Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, James Harden. Is it LeBron James? And to me, it's a no-brainer. Russell Westbrook's the MVP of the NBA last night. He had another crazy game against the Nets. He recorded his 33rd double-double on the year. He had 25 points, 12 rebounds, 19 assists. He makes double-doubles look really easy. He makes it look effortless, which I think hurts him. He makes it look so easy that people see and think that's not hard to do. Like, he should be doing more. When, in all honesty, that's crazy that he's able to do it like that. And I think if you look for, who's the best player in the NBA, that's LeBron. And that shouldn't be a discussion. And if you want to discuss that, email the show, next PT wins. I'd love to hear your take on why LeBron's not the best player in the NBA. I'm going to be honest, my response to you will probably not be very nice because I can't think of any situation where LeBron, in any aspect of the game, where he's not the best. But, yeah, Russell Westbrook, MVP, in my opinion. I'm not really sure why we care so much about the MVP in that race. I'm more concerned about the Warriors and what they're doing, and can anybody compete with Golden State or Cleveland? Are both teams going to be healthy come tournament time with, Kevin Love now expected to be back here soon on the road trip, and Kevin Durant hopefully back before the end of the regular season. So I guess health would be my biggest storyline right now, not the MVP race, but if that's what people want to talk about, that's fine. You do you. But this kind of brings me to my next point, and I teased this earlier on when I said I'm going to tell you guys what I think is the biggest problem with sports. And to me, it's not even close. I hate how much, as sports fans and sports talk radio and sports talk television and us as the media in general, how much we have to debate things. It's like a game inside the game. You have the game, and then you have your debate about the game. I don't know if it's like, as sports fans, I know we're crazy competitive. Like, I'm ridiculously competitive. When I come home, my brother and I, we compete just in the stupidest way. Like, just random stuff that should never have to be competed against. We have to do it. Like, there's something about it that it fuels me as a former athlete and just somebody who loves to compete. And I think that kind of transfers into this whole debate thing. Like, we look at players like Russell Westbrook, and instead of just sitting back and enjoying what he's doing and admiring what he's doing, we have to liken him to a past player, or we have to compare him to a current player, but how would Russell Westbrook do if he played back when Larry Bird played? Or what if Wilt Chamberlain was playing now in this NBA? Like, how many triple-doubles would he be getting? You can't do it. That's the worst. That's the biggest problem with these debates, is there's no answer to any of them because it's not possible. You can't possibly take, like years ago, well, still today, the Michael Jordan versus LeBron James, who's the greatest player of all time. You can't do it. Like, I unfortunately was too young. I never got to watch Michael Jordan. And I think that from my generation on, it's one of the biggest sports crimes ever that I didn't get the chance to watch him play. But that being said, I do get to watch LeBron play. So people of my generation or younger could be biased about who the greatest player is. But it doesn't matter. Like, can't we just respect what Michael did and enjoy what we're seeing LeBron do now? Because before you know it, LeBron's going to be out. And there's going to be generations to come who didn't get to see LeBron or Michael, who will have their own Michael Jordan, LeBron James. Now, let's be perfectly clear. I am not putting those two in the same category because I do think Michael Jordan's a better player. But it drives me nuts when I have to listen to people try to compare, like, dream teams. Like, back when last year we were talking about the Warriors team against the Bulls team back in the day. Like, You can't do it. You can't compare. You just have to. I wish we could all just appreciate. If we appreciated as much as we debated, I think that the casual sports fan would be more interested in sports. I think that the way sometimes it looks on TV when you see Embrace Debate and Undisputed and First Take, and I mean, it's just to name a few. There's so many shows out there where they get off by countering each other with ridiculous statements that no one can back up as proof because it's not possible. And somehow that makes your point stronger when really you're not saying anything worthwhile to the conversation. Why can't we just look at the people and the opportunity we have as sports fans to watch teams and athletes perform at a level that we didn't know was possible? But when we take that level and we try to transfer it to somebody from another generation, it's not fair to either side to do it. And I think it's important that we make sure that, you know, we try to limit that, because I think that as a casual sports fan, they will be more intrigued in our sports and in our conversations if we don't. We get emotional, we get competitive, everything is personal. You can't look at it that way, and this is just one of many situations where Russell Westbrook is the MVP, and I don't think it's even close. But for the sake of debate, we will debate it from here until the end of the season on who the MVP is, which drives people away because no one wants to hear the same conversation every single day about the same topic with a different crazy take than the day before. Even as a sports fanatic and junkie like I am, I get sick and tired of hearing about it. So I can't even imagine what the casual fan thinks about it. It's not good for the sport, it's not good for the brand, and it's not good for people in general to do. But it's ratings, and somehow these shows continue to get by with doing it. And until people get sick and tired to the point where they speak up, it's going to continue to happen. I just wish it didn't. We'll be back right after this. Next Point Wins. Welcome back to Next Point Wins. We're going to put some icing on this cake and get ready to put the bow on top of the present as we close up today's show. It's been a fun one here back in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Back on the radio next week. WCCR Purdue Tuned In app, live 10 a.m. from Purdue University, podcast and YouTube to follow. If you haven't seen all of our shows up to this point, feel free to go back and watch them. There's a lot of good stuff, even non-sports related things. We talked about a lot of movies and shows and diets back in some previous podcasts, so I invite you back to view those. Those can be seen both on, or heard, both on SoundCloud and YouTube. Some NFL news for you. Percy Harvin is going to retire from the NFL, and this time he says it's for good. We know he retired last time and came back with the Seahawks late in the season and contributed to their team, but he is now officially retired. A player who kind of got lost in Minnesota, was there during the tough days of Minnesota, never really got a chance to show his full potential. He was a great return man, fast wide receiver, playmaker for sure. Never really got a great opportunity to show it off. He had 1 year in Seattle where, if I believe I think he won a Super Bowl with, I think he was with Seattle when they won the Super Bowl. I'm not positive on that, but I feel like I remember him being a game changer in that Denver blowout game. Yeah, I think so. Also related to the Seahawks, they say they are okay with running back Eddie Lacy being 240 pounds. Now, I think this is the question we're all asking, is it 240 pounds with water or without water? Because that's the same weight that Leonard Fournette weighed in at, and he immediately said that it was water weight, and don't worry. But Seahawks are okay with Eddie Lacy being that big. Fine by me. I think they're more concerned with him staying healthy because he's had injury problems in the past. In the MLB, I am pleased to announce that the Tampa Bay Rays are reportedly going to sign outfielder Kevin Kiermaier to a 6-year, $50 million contract. So congratulations to Kevin Kiermaier. He's going to get paid, and that's a contract that, you know, as the MLB, when you look at the MLB and how it's structured, when you get to this paycheck, this is the big one, because from here on out, you're set with health insurance, life insurance. MLB takes care of you from this point forward, and it's good to see that a player like Kevin Kiermaier was able to get that contract somebody who did it right. He went through the minors, he stuck it out, he rode those crappy buses to different cities to play games, staying in those motels and low-end hotels, and he never lost the dream and never lost faith in where he could be. And when he got an opportunity in the MLB, he took advantage of it. And it's comforting to see that people still go about the right way, like Kevin Kiermaier. And I just saw the other day a highlight of him in spring training making a diving catch over his shoulder, going near the wall. No one plays better outfield defense than Kevin Kiermaier as far as arm and athletic ability, in my opinion. And he is constantly making plays. He never ceases to amaze the human body and what it's able to do when going for a fly ball. And because of that, he gets rewarded. So congratulations to Kevin, alumni of Bishop Brewers High School, where I went to. They're going to be taking on, I think I'm going to go to that game. It depends on when Purdue plays on Saturday, meaning that they win on Thursday. Can't look too far ahead, but if they were to win on Thursday and play Saturday, it's the same time as a semi-state for Bishop Brewers basketball. So if you're in the area, the game will be played in Huntington, Indiana. And if you got nothing to do on Saturday and you're looking for a fun activity, I highly recommend, maybe not to Huntington if that's too far, but check like areas around you that have semi-state action and watch some Indiana high school basketball, because it truly is phenomenal to watch and amazing to see what these kids play for and the atmosphere they play in, and it's really cool. So I highly recommend everybody trying to go out and find a local basketball game in semi-state. This day in sports history, in 1912, pitcher Cy Young retired from baseball. He had 511 wins. Amazing. Never really got to see, you see some black and white videos of him, but it's sad that video hadn't progressed to the point it is today where we could truly appreciate what Cy Young did. It's nice that we had the Pitcher of the Year award, the Cy Young Award, named after him. And so that was in 1912. Today in music history, in 1999, Bruce Springsteen was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I like Bruce Springsteen a lot. I thought his halftime performance a couple years back was one of the best of all time. He still gets out there and rocks it today. You can see videos of him playing in different venues, and I think he's still touring. So if he comes to an area near you, he's still out there. Go see him. In the movie world, happy birthday to Eva Longoria. She's phenomenal, really fantastic. So happy birthday to you, Eva. Hopefully a fan of the show. If not, hopefully soon. So St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. It's pretty exciting. So happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone. Not really a big St. Patrick's guy. I think it's an overrated holiday, but we'll save that for another time. Email me if you disagree, but I think St. Patrick's Day is top 3 worst holidays ever. Probably because I'm not Irish at all, so I'm sure that has something big to do with it. So moving on, for all those traveling on spring break, I hope the rest of your week is fantastic. Hopefully you're somewhere warm. Here in Fort Wayne, I know 2 days ago I was out shoveling the driveway, which I've never done on a spring break, but we had some snow here, and if you're out east, stay warm, make a fire. Sorry to hear that, but all those in Florida or California or anywhere tropical, hopefully you're having great weather and having a great week. And I will see you Purdue students back on campus next week. Make sure you know your role today. Make today a really good day. I hope the rest of your week is great. I hope you enjoyed the first round matchups of March Madness, the round of 64 and then the round of 32. I know I'll have 4 TVs set up all day, Thursday, Friday, and I don't think I'll leave my seat. I'll send out some pictures through my Twitter page, Matt_Geely, of my setup. And if you have a setup similar to mine or, in your opinion, better, send it my way. I'd love to see what kind of atmosphere and TV man cave situation you got going wherever you seem to be watching the game. So send those my way. I'd love to see them. Maybe I'll share the best and retweet them and email them to, I'll put them on the YouTube and SoundCloud pages for people to see. So email me your best ones or send them to me on Twitter, and I'll make sure to get them out there. Last little bit of news in Norway. There was a hockey game last week that lasted 8 overtime periods. 8 overtime periods. Sudden death, overtime, 8 periods. The game lasted 8.5 hours. Players were seen on the bench eating pizza and spaghetti in between shifts, trying to keep carbs in them to keep their energy up. One wife who was not at the game or didn't have any connection to the game called the police because she was concerned about where her husband was, and then she found out that he was still playing hockey. So after 217 minutes of play, Joakim Jensen, he scored a goal to win the Norwegian playoff game. And I'm sure you guys all know why he won that, because at the time, it was Next Point Wins. Have a good day.
Just let it go.